Actually, no, I lied. I go in at 3 today. So I got about 2 hours before I head into work. So that's a bunch of extra time for reading, which is awesome. I thought I was only gonna have an hour. That's crazy. But I thought before I even get to my first spin of the weekend, I should also talk about what I'm reading currently. Off the TBR list, we got Basketball, A Love Story by Jackie McMullen, Rafe Bartholomew, and Dan Flores. This is a collection of interviews about different eras of basketball, the sport, what people have learned, like life, lessons, all that stuff. And I am only 19 pages into this. I read the first chapter of this for my reading the first chapter of every book on my TBR video that I did, which if I remember correctly, something is popping up on this side of the screen. And it was exactly what I thought it was gonna be, but it's just like a kind of clunky read, if that makes sense. Like, it's a collection of interviews that I'm holding the book upside down. It's a collection of interviews where they're all talking about a certain era or a certain topic or a certain lesson they learned while playing the game in high school, college, or professionally. But they're not all talking about the same thing all the time. So you just have a bunch of quotes that are taken both in and out of context, if that makes sense. And it just makes for like a very weird read. And I think that, like, not in the worst way possible, but I don't think this book needed to be written. I feel like the documentary Basketball Love Story, which is where all these interviews are from, probably do a better job of telling these stories than the written word. So I think I'm going to finish this. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great stories in here. It's just not like the most enticing read. Another book on my TBR, The Anatomy of Violence, The Biological Roots of Crime by Adrian Rain. I'm happy I gave this book another chance because I started reading this book maybe once or twice and I gave up on it for a variety of reasons, but I am enjoying it. It is very informative. I'm also not a big like annotator in books, and what I've been trying to do more, especially with nonfiction books, is annotate more. So like I've been trying to kind of like write in the margins and stuff like that, just to kind of make sure that while I'm reading the book, I'm getting as much out of it as I can, especially when it's nonfiction. And last but definitely not least is probably the prettiest book I have on my bookcase. This is Hamilton, the Revolution by Lin-Manuel Miranda and Jeremy McCarter, which is kind of like a companion piece to Hamilton the musical. This book is a deep dive into everything about the musical. It has like annotated song lyrics from the writers. It has beautiful photography. The pages are like thick cardstock with frayed edges. Like, and as someone who listened to the original Broadway soundtrack like religiously when I was in high school, like, this has been a very fun, very interesting read. Spoiler, this is probably what my next video is going to be about, because I watched the play on Disney Plus when they released it on Disney Plus on a plane, and I was less than sober, if you want to put it that way. So I want to watch this again with a clear mind, with a much deeper insight into everything that goes into making a production like that. So I'm probably not going to be reading this today, but I do want to get this finished in like a week or so. So those are the books that we're going to be picking through today. And honestly, like, Basketball Love Story is such a slog. I might just read it just to get finished with it, which sucks because I was really excited to read that book. But Anatomy of Violence has also been really interesting. And I'm going to finish The Revolution, Hamilton the Revolution, either way. So I'm probably going to read Basketball Love Story, but we'll see. Let me get this screen recording going, and then we can figure it out. All right. I also don't have to edit a video tonight, so I can stay up late reading if I have to. We're at 2:25. 250 on the first day is wicked nasty work. I gotta read 250 pages of a novel to start out this challenge. It is crazy, but I do have, now it's about an hour and a half before I have to start getting ready for work, but still, that's more time than I expected. I think because of that, we're gonna start with Basketball Love Story, and 250 would get me a majority of the way through this book. I'd be somewhere around here in terms of being finished with the book, so over half. I start getting ready for work. I made it until page 80. So what is that? That's 61 pages because I started on page 19. I don't know if I said that. All on Basketball, A Love Story here. And I'm glad I gave it a chance because it's definitely starting to get better. I think it might have just been that like introductory section that was giving me some trouble. So I am really enjoying this. I am going to be able to get maybe 10 or 20 pages done while I'm on break at work today. And then I'll have a big chunk to read tonight. But I think this was a very solid start, and I can't wait to keep on rolling.
One eternity later.
All right, y'all, so I am home from work. I didn't get any reading done on my break because Eddie Burback released a new video and I got distracted. So I did the math and I ended up reading 61 out of my 250 pages, which is a non-insignificant amount, but it's still not great. Luckily, one thing I'm realizing about this book, which I'm still going to be reading, Basketball Love Story, one thing I'm realizing is that it's a pretty quick read and I'm enjoying that. So I'm glad I gave this book more than like the first 20 or 30 pages of it that had me a little shaky on it. But I'm going to read that and then I'm going to head to bed. Also, yes, my bed is in my closet. I don't know how it got there, but don't worry, I've alerted the authorities. I think I stayed up till like 4:30 reading the pages that I had to read, and I did do it. It was scary for a second there. It was scary. I thought I fell asleep, but I didn't. We kept on reading. I think this book, Basketball Love Story by all of these people, is the perfect example of a 2-star book. And the reason I say that is because I think the content in here is very, very good. I think hearing all of these stories about different times within the history of the sport, I think is really interesting. And for a fan like me, like I really enjoy learning about this sort of stuff. I just don't know if this is the format to do it. So I don't know why they would take all of the interviews and stuff from the documentary series and make it into a book. Like, I don't understand the value of that, if that makes sense. Like, I think watching the documentary series, you probably get everything that's in this book. Of course, there might be some stuff taken out, but I still think you would get everything in this book in a much more like palatable way. I'm gonna be honest, I really want like 50 pages tops today. I stayed up so late last night reading this that I need my Z's, you know? But we're gonna do the spin now just to see how many pages we have to read today. Click to spin. Let's see. We're passing 250. We're at 25. We're at 50. Okay, I'm good with 50. An executive decision has been made. So I'm putting down Basketball Love Story because I'm a little burnt out on it. And I'm picking up The Anatomy of Violence. Again, I didn't mark the last page I was on, but I wasn't too deep into this. I was on page 53. So this would get me to page 100, obviously, 103. So I'm going to get my 50 pages out of Anatomy of Violence. But first, I'm going to get some coffee. I'm going to make some breakfast. And then I'll throw a time lapse when I start reading. All right? Let's have a good morning. Make sure you do something that makes you some money today. Time lapse now. So I just got home from work. I still look very crusty. I would argue more crusty than I normally look. But I was able to get, I think, 15 or 18 pages done before I went into work. And I was supposed to read when I was on my break. But then Smosh uploaded a new video. You know the vibes. I got distracted. I think I'm going to shower and just relax for a little bit. It was a long day. Even though I got out early, it was a long day. So I'm going to do my reading. I'm going to journal for a little bit. Maybe finish the Smosh video because I didn't get to finish the video. And then we'll talk in the morning because I do have a lot of thoughts about The Anatomy of Violence. And I'm only, I think, 60-something pages in so far. But I do have a lot of thoughts, so I'll catch up with y'all tomorrow morning.
Later.
We have to talk about the spin that we're going to do. And we're going to talk about what I read in The Anatomy of Violence last night. This book is so interesting because it's trying to predict a connection between our genes and how we act, right? And there's a lot of connections to say that our genes can dictate how we act in certain forms, right? But he is trying to toe a line between saying, hey, if you have these genes, you're kind of genetically predisposed to being a bad person, which can be kind of if you don't handle it correctly. And I am 103 pages into this book, and I'm thinking that he's doing an okay job of towing that line. There are some moments in this book that have me actually like, whatever that emotion is. He has a whole section in this book about sexual assault and how there are certain genes and certain parts of the brain that if they're not acting the way they should be acting, it can make you kind of predisposed to doing certain things and like a loss of inhibition and self-control and stuff like that. So he has a whole section, I'll put it up on screen, called This. I'll see, come on, focus, which I fully understand are like necessary parts to writing this book. It's just like, for some reason, I didn't expect it. Here's another one. Can't tell if I'm being sensitive or if this is wild. My thing with a lot of nonfiction that's trying to teach you something is you can usually get the main idea of the nonfiction book within the first 100 or so pages. And I feel like I've gotten what the author's trying to say about the biological roots of crime within the first 100 or so pages. Now, there are about, you know, once you take out like the sources and all that, there's about 400 pages in this book. So I'm very interested to see what the last 300 pages are that wasn't already covered in the first 100 pages that I already read, if that makes sense. It's giving 3 stars so far. I was worried that this was going to be a DNF. Like that first like 20 or 30 pages had me struggling, but I am happy that I continued reading it because I think it's going to be educational, you know, and at the end of the day, I'm just trying to read a book and learn something. I do have work today, but I do not have work tomorrow. So if I have to stay up late to get some reading done, I'm not going to be hating. I'll tell y'all right now, if it lands on 200, I don't think I could do it. But 50 was manageable. I think like if I'm trying to build a reading habit, 25, 50 pages a day, that's a good number. But I'm hoping for like a 150. I'm hoping for still a little bit of a challenge, but not 250 where I have to stay up till 5 a.m. reading. You know, I'm still dealing with the repercussions of that. So, all right, let's press the wheel right here. We're past 250. We're past 250. 25? That's weak sauce, bro. We're ending the challenge on a low note. We'll read more than 25, I don't care. I was gonna say that I was gonna try and get some reading done in Basketball Love Story, because after the 250 pages, I'm a decent chunk of the way through the book. But I forgot that I had a third book in this video, Hamilton the Revolution, and I might as well get 25 pages out of it. This has like, a lot of the pages are just like song annotations. So you can see right here, it has some of the songs in Hamilton as well as like some footnotes. And while there's also like, obviously like there's actual writing in this book, a lot of these pages are just full on photography and behind the scenes kind of stuff about the musical. So I think I could get 25 pages knocked out of this pretty quickly, but I'll read more of it just so I can get a decent chunk of the way through the book. And I've kind of got my fill of basketball and violence in my life. With that said, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty. I haven't had a single bite of coffee this entire recording. A bite of coffee, Chris? What are you doing? So I'm probably not gonna get any reading done before I leave for work, but I'll cut to the time lapse. I love a time lapse. I don't know if you've been on this channel before. If you haven't, what's up? But I love a time lapse. So I think you'll see most of my reading of this book being done in a time lapse in a few seconds for you, but in a few hours for me. I'll catch y'all then.